to the second episode of Inside the Marathon Project, the podcast that takes you inside the stories of the athletes, organizers, and dreamers behind this one-of-a-kind distance event. The second edition is coming up this December, 20th and 21st in Chandler, Arizona. I'm your host, Steve Sievert, and I am absolutely thrilled to be welcoming in one of the legends of American distance running and the reigning Marathon Project Women's Champion, Sara Hall. Sara, thanks so much for joining us on Inside TMP.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you have had a lot in the hopper recently. You just announced you're going to be towing the line at the New York City Marathon in November. Your daughter, Hannah, is going to be running Boston in April. And like you don't have enough to do, you're an author. Your memoir is coming out next year, and I want to get into all of that. But first, I want to take you down memory lane just a little bit to December of 2020, that unforgettable performance at the Marathon Project. I'll be curious to see what you think, but I'm going to say the race of your life, 2 hours, 20 minutes, 32 seconds, the fastest marathon by an American woman on U.S. soil at the time. What do you remember most vividly about that day, and how did everything come together for you to produce such a special performance?
Yeah, it really was an unforgettable moment. That year was such a roller coaster from, the Olympic trials early in the year straight into COVID, and then just continuing to motivate myself without any for sure races on the schedule and just intrinsically motivate myself that whole year. But then having London come up as an opportunity and really having the race of my life there. And then, what I remember most about the Marathon Project, like the event, I remember the race itself and it's a special memory, but it's really the training for that race that stands out most in my mind. Cause it's like, these races are kind of the one, a couple public moments of what we do, but really there's all these private moments of grinding it out, and that we, as athletes just love just as much. And I just had some really magical training going into that race on that course. And so when I think about the Marathon Project, I more think of those workouts, actually, just feeling so excited to see what I could do out there.
And you took a real crack at the American record that day. You were on American record pace during the race. And it was a little unusual because obviously it's taking place in COVID. There aren't fans out there. So it was kind of difficult to, rally some energy from a crowd because it wasn't there. What was going through your head as you were trying to set that American record in those very unusual circumstances?
Yeah, it was definitely a different atmosphere out there. I think it normally would have been harder, but I think we just had a different perspective because all of a sudden we were just so grateful for a race opportunity. I think we had just taken them for granted for so long with everything being canceled that now, normally would have been oh, this isn't a great scenario with no fans out here and stuff. But in the moment it was no, this is awesome weather. It's a flat course. I'm going to take advantage of this because I don't know when the next opportunity will be. So yeah, when I think about my mentality out there, it was really just, I was able to get in a flow state. I towed the line just completely relaxed. I did the best workouts of my life leading up to it on that course. And so I'd really gotten to just do exactly that thing over and over. Whereas when I got to the race, it was I just need to just go do what I've been doing and what I've loved doing, right? Every time I went to work out on that course, I was just so excited to get out there and rip it. And so it was really just a matter of this is what you love to do. This is no different than what you do every week. And, but really just curiosity to see what I could do that day. And, it was tough out there in that, as the race got harder and American record pace felt a lot harder, you do miss the fans, you miss the energy that they give you. I'm someone that gets a lot out of the atmosphere of a race, and it felt a lot like training. It felt like those workouts, right? Where it's like more than you want it to. I was just kind of time trialing out there. But yeah, I look back and I feel like I got the most out of myself on that day for sure.
You mentioned being able to train on that course leading into the race. How much of a factor was that, do you think, in producing that performance?
I think it was a factor in that, like, I was able to get practice on the roundabouts, because I think that was, definitely not ideal to be making like 180-degree turns all the time. And I think I need a little practice of like, how do I kind of keep my momentum going, or how do I kind of get momentum coming out of the roundabouts, because they're happening every 2 miles. And and I think I learned how to like work the course a little bit. Like it's not completely flat, so I mean it's really flat, but like there are parts that are more slightly downhill or slightly uphill. So I kind of learned those, and I feel like I was able to just figure that out for the race for sure.
You mentioned the uniqueness of the course. That's actually a question that we had from one of our Instagram followers. They want to know, from your perspective, what would you recommend for somebody who's participating in the race in terms of some specific training or drills, or maybe practicing turns? They're curious about your tips to help them get ready for this unique course.
Yeah, I think practicing some 180-degree turns would be good, actually. I think just trying to, like, Ryan actually was out there trying to figure out the best angle to come into it, like kind of going a little wide so that you can try to hit it at a slightly less sharp angle. And so I think you could just put a cone out there, and maybe when you're doing like your interval workouts, doing them kind of on a horseshoe instead of just going straight, I think would be a really good thing. Other than that, I mean, the weather in Phoenix, you really can't beat that time of year. You're not going to really have to heat train or anything to prepare for this. I think it's going to be pretty predictable.
So sticking with that year, that very unusual year for all of us, 2020, I want to take you back a little bit further, because obviously that year led off with the Olympic Trials Marathon. You had the DNF, but then, I think it's really easy for some runners perhaps to say, gosh, you're building up to the Olympic Trials Marathon. It didn't go well. Heck, you could have called it a season right there, but you persevered and you went on. You mentioned London earlier. You went on to compete at London. You finished second overall, becoming the first American woman to podium in London in 14 years. And then obviously the Marathon Project performance. How did you pick yourself up from that disappointment in Atlanta in February of 2020 to then go on to accomplish what is arguably perhaps your best ever year in the marathon, with the two performances in London and Chandler?
Yeah, Atlanta, was really crushing. I was 37 years old. I went into it having the fastest time in the US in 2019, the year before. And so I had really high hopes that, like, finally, this was my sixth Olympic trials. And every time you have like super high hopes, this is going to be the year, only to be disappointed. And so I was like, this is probably my last shot. Like and so the course there was really crazy. It was 1,300 feet of gain and loss, like hillier than Boston. And it was a really odd time with shoes, right? Like some of us were in super shoes, some weren't. And so there are a lot of dynamics at play, and you'll have to read my book to hear all about all my thoughts and stuff going into that. But yeah, I think rebounding from that, typically how I'd always regrouped after disappointing races, and I'd had plenty of them in my career, was just to throw myself into what's next. And and that's what I did at first. Like I just refocused towards the track trials, even though I hadn't raced track in 4 years, and was like, I'm going to try to make this 10K team. But then for the first time ever, I wasn't able to refocus for a race because all of those got canceled. And so that was a really tough feeling of like, all of a sudden I didn't have that thing I was chasing or that concrete goal to focus on. And I struggled for sure. Like I didn't feel like myself, like mentally, and just, just there was like a malaise that kind of like settled over me. Like my kids are home all day, every day, they're doing school at home. But really like what I had, I think what allowed me to have the best races of my life in this year, where a lot of people honestly just struggled with motivation. A lot of pros just like hit the couch and they're like, hey, I'm going to just train once I know there's going to be a race for sure. Whereas like I was able to keep training really hard, is that like I had learned to love the grind like in my career, and I'd learned to enjoy training for the sake of training without promise of like a race going well. Because honestly, for so much of my career, like a lot of my races didn't go well. And I struggled with, a lot of failure. And so, but the upside of that is in the process, like I learned, like, I don't need that to enjoy the process. Like I can, like, regardless of outcomes, like I'd figured out how to love the grind. And so, so I think that really helped me in that year because, I just really tuned into my love for training. Like I explored new places, Crested Butte, Colorado, 9,000 feet. That's become a staple in my training ever since. And that really was brought on by this period of COVID. And then, super shoes, like we got in a super shoe for the first time, and that was really fun, and that, allowed me to like hit some of my best workouts ever. And then, so yeah, it was really just like building my own momentum, and that wasn't always easy. There were definitely times I struggled with motivation, but yeah, I think it was really like the years of disappointment in my career led me to be able to keep going in that time.
You mentioned the love for the process, the love for the grind. I want to take you back even a little bit earlier in your life. You had a standout high school career. I mean, you were a Foot Locker national champion, and then you're a 7-time All-American at Stanford. Did that love for the process of running happen during those formative years when you were in high school and college?
It did, yeah. I think some of it was nature for sure, just like how I'm wired, and then some was nurture of like my environment. But I think having kids now, I realize like how Ryan and I are like wired really differently. Like they're not wired like we are, with we just like loving to like push ourselves really hard all the time. And but yeah, just as a kid, like I was someone that like I just always wanted to be outside. I'm like, I'm gonna try to rollerblade to the beach today, even though it's like 30 miles from my house, just like stuff like that. And then running really gave me that freedom to explore my limits, just as I was exploring the surroundings. Like I lived across the street from this giant state park. And so so I really just loved exploring the trails there and like seeing if I could run the same loop faster every day. And so yeah, it was really kind of innate, and then just continued to grow with like as I got into competing, I just fell in love with competing, and it like fanned that into flame even more.
So you've mentioned Ryan a couple of times. I'm sure our audience on FloTrack, we're a bunch of running geeks. They know exactly who you're talking about. He might happen to also be great in American distance running. So take us inside that dynamic a little bit, because there is not every couple that would be able to have the working relationship that the two of you have with Ryan as your coach, and a marriage happen successfully and simultaneously at the same time. Why does that dynamic work for the two of you?
Yeah, it's definitely a juggle, I think at times. I think partly what works is like Ryan and I are wired similarly, where we really love to experiment. We love to take risks. And I think how he trained in his career was like, just like, let's try things that are outside the box. And then I kind of like to do the same thing. So, and I think there's mutual trust where, he knows me better than anyone. And really like, you want your coach to like know you inside and out, ideally. And it's a collaboration where like, he can see what I can't see, but he can't feel what I can feel. So, so there's trust that like I can give feedback. And I've always honestly kind of wanted that in coaching relationships, and struggled at times. Like I didn't have any control. Like I think I like to have a say in my training, because I feel like I do have good instincts and I know my body really well. But I would say there's definitely challenges with it too. And you can read all about those in my book. I'm pretty vulnerable about those. And one of the biggest ones was during COVID, because he actually gave our whole family COVID. And I had a really hard time struggling with long COVID stuff after that. And it really like put a strain on, probably the biggest strain on our coaching relationship and relationship in general. But yeah, honestly, it's, I would say the biggest thing that's helped is just Ryan is a really patient and loyal person. Like I'm less of a coachable person than he is patient. And I think that's mainly what we can credit like it working to, is more him than me.
Yeah. And in terms of the structure, do you draw a bright line between this is the time that you, Ryan, are my coach, and this is the time that you are the husband? Or is that just too difficult and everything sort of meshes together?
It all meshes together, but it kind of always has for us. Like even before he was my coach, like ever since college, we've been kind of encouraging each other in our careers. Like when he was competing, I was a huge support person for him. And then when he went out on his own without a coach, I was like his main support person. So it's kind of always just been interwoven into our lives. And this is my 21st year now running professionally. So we're constantly just like dialoguing about like how we can evolve this craft of ours. Just like we probably will even when I'm done competing, right? And we're still going after what goals that we're doing, whether it's just like some mountain route that we've dreamed up or something. Like we're always going to be trying to evolve things and figure out better ways to do it.
So I want to stick with family a little bit. Probably a lot of our listeners and viewers know this, but I want to hear a little bit of the story from your perspective. In 2015, you and Ryan made both an immensely generous decision and a life-altering one when you decided to adopt 4 daughters, 4 sisters from Ethiopia. What went into that decision? Because you talk about a huge one. Not sure you make bigger decisions in a life than that one.
Yeah, it was a tough decision. And honestly, like with Ryan, like I felt a clear word from God that like he was who I was supposed to marry. And I was really hoping I would have that when it came to the girls. We heard about them. We were already in the adoption process. We thought we'd just adopt one baby because we were new parents. We didn't know what we were doing. And through a series of events, trying to adopt one girl that didn't work out that was older. And I write all about this in my book. And it's kind of like the more unfiltered version of the story of finding the girls and their transition and everything. But yeah, through that, our hearts were just opened to older kids in general. And we heard about our kids, and Ryan is very like all in from the beginning, as he always is. But I was more like fearful about it because, I think, we just talked to a lot of families that adopted older kids and they've been through significant trauma. And was a really hard road for not just the kids, but the families, as you can understand. And so we were kind of, like counting the costs. Like all the families were like, hey, you need to like count the costs. Like you're not gonna be able to do this career anymore, like running, if you take this on. And I was really enjoying my career. Like I was just starting to have success on the roads, like, and really loving that. It was kind of like a rebirth of my career at the time, moving from the track to the roads. And so it was a tough decision, but really it came down to Ryan was like, I can't think of a reason to say no that's not based in fear. And so I really like realized that was the case for me too. And like I chose love over fear in that moment. And it felt like just jumping off a cliff kind of, and like that we were just gonna do this and say yes to this. And I think one thing that comforted us is that we felt like running had prepared us in some ways uniquely to take this on, because we knew it was like to just stick in there every day, like when things are hard, and we expected things to be really hard. And so, but we're like, but we know that we can persevere. We know we can like just grind it out day in, day out. And parenting is a grind, right? So that's like part of my book is For the Love of the Grind. And a lot of it is about parenting too, because that's like a daily thing that you're just, there's no escaping from, So that was, there's a lot more details in the book, but that was kind of the biggest part of it, was just really saying yes to love. And I really wrote about it a lot because I really hope other people can think about like how they can do that in their life. Like I look at my kids now and I'm like sometimes we're at the dinner table and I'm just like staring at them and I'm like, wow, like I could have missed this. Like at some point these kids were like a choice, like I could have really easily said no to, And so, I hope other people are inspired to adopt or foster or do respite care, or, there's so many kids in the world that need homes, that need support. And so, yeah.
That's fascinating how you mentioned that running kind of set you and Ryan up for success in this way? Because there are challenges, obviously, in running, and it helps you overcome those challenges. Also, potentially a connection to running. Obviously, Ethiopia has a rich and long history in running. Was that a factor in you and Ryan choosing to seek out adopting children from Ethiopia?
It was, yeah. My sister does malaria research, and so she's lived in Africa quite a bit in different countries. So, I just visiting her, I was able to see like the orphan crisis going on in throughout Africa, and so I'd always kind of envisioned myself adopting from Africa. And then at the time, Ethiopia was one of the healthiest adoption programs. But yeah, it was really like we already felt a connection with Ethiopia because of running, and so actually, I went to Ethiopia as we were just first starting to adopt from there, and just fell in love with the country, the culture. That's one of my favorite parts about the book I wrote, is like getting to share more about like my love for that country, and also what it's like to train there. Cause I joined in a training group, and I really got to see, like, I feel really lucky that I wasn't like a tourist. Like at first I was like a tourist, like observing training there, but then I feel like I really got embraced by the running community there, and got to see really like how they train. And it really influenced like how I ended up training myself. And I think what led to like some of my success in the marathon was really shaped by my time training there. Cause we spent a lot of time there in the process of adopting the girls. We were there like basically every other month for a year, just to get to know them, and just spend time with them on their turf. Because a lot of times in international adoption, like the kids don't really know the adoptive parents. They just swoop in, take them, and like bring them to this like alien planet, like in the US. And we wanted to just like not have them be the only ones that were having to change and adapt and everything. Like we wanted to try to really get to know their culture, their language, like on their turf. And like I think that really helped our connection as a family. And so yeah, all that to say, it was influential in choosing Ethiopia, and yeah.
Well, as you were going through that process, as you mentioned, someone in your network, I don't know if you said it was a family member or a friend, said, well, if you do this, you're not going to be able to compete at a high level anymore. You're going to have to change your lifestyle or your profession entirely. And well, certainly that did not turn out to be the case, thank goodness. But what changes did you have to make at that time? Your daughters are young ladies now, so they're certainly not as in need as much mothering as they were then. But what changes did you have to make to your training and your racing schedule once you became a mom of four?
Yeah, definitely a lot of changes. I think when you become a parent, like your life is no longer your own. It's like before we could just make our schedule exactly around how we wanted to do things, what's best for running. Like now I would spend a lot more time in Crested Butte training than I do now, because my kids are in school. So they're like stuck in Flagstaff. And so yeah, I think it's a lot of sacrifices, but then at the same time, like I think we tried to like have the girls also realize like, hey, our goals are important too, and like I think our dynamic is like we're a team, and we all support each other's goals. And it's not like the mom is the slave of everyone else and her needs don't matter, she's the martyr. Like I very much still had things I was going after, and like my kids, like they're in it with me, and they know what I'm training for. Like they follow the sport. Like every night before the Olympic trials, and this last or a year ago, they were like praying that I would make the Olympic team at dinner every night, And so I think that's good, actually. I think it's good for them to learn to care for other and support other people in the process. So yeah, so all that to say, I mean, really being able to continue this was because my kids were in it with me. And but it was a juggle for sure, and it was a tough juggle. It still is, and it's something I'm constantly checking in with Ryan and them about, and it's times. In the book, I talk about times I didn't do it well and times I feel like I did. For me, going into Houston half marathon, like I really wanted to break that American record, and I got and going into Chicago, actually even before that Chicago Marathon 2021, I like wanted to win that race and break the American record, and I got really myopic in pursuing my goals, and then yeah, like I had some experiences where like I had to really shift that perspective as I went into Houston and approach that differently. And so yeah, I talk a lot more about that, but yeah, it's a juggle for sure. It's not easy, but I think it's a valuable one. And I think it's really powerful for my kids to see me going after something that makes me come alive, and they see the impact of my career in a lot of different ways. And they're all girls, right? Like I want them to be powerful women that have like they're going after their passion and with excellence, like to the best of their ability, but also showing up well for the people in their life and trying to work out that tension well for them.
And what I hear, I can't speak from personal experience, but what I hear is this mom strength is a real thing, right? I mean, has that been something that as you've become a mom, I don't know, has that sort of changed your outlook on things, or do you think about hard workouts differently because you're a mom now versus when you weren't?
I think that there is a perspective shift where, I think at times when I first became a professional runner, all of a sudden there was like so much pressure around every workout, like overthinking all the details outside of training because you're like, this is my job now to succeed. Like, and then it's funny how people, a lot of times they run better in college than when they become pro, because it's like they're overdoing all the little things, or they're overthinking things, or have too much pressure. And it's like, wow, how did they, like myself included, how did you run faster in college when you're juggling all these demands of school and social life and everything? And I think a lot of that is the perspective. And I think kids do bring a more balanced perspective to your life of like running really matters to me, but also like I'm good without it. Like I have a really beautiful, full life outside of running. And I think when you can then line up and it's like, it not everything is hinging on that race. Like it's less pressure to feel like I'm content, like with who I am in my life, like whether or not this goes well. It's almost like you can surrender the outcome more. And I find that can lead to like better performances.
And two of your daughters are runners themselves, right? I mentioned Hannah earlier in the intro that she's going to be lining up for Boston, but Mia as well. How did that take shape with your two daughters? I mean, obviously they got a couple of good role models in the house, but did you encourage them, or did they kind of find that on their own, living in a house of incredible runners like you and Ryan?
I think it's probably both. Like it was interesting when we first met them. We told them we were professional runners, and Hannah, our oldest, was like, I want to be a runner. Like, and they'd grown up watching, or not grown up because they were in a rural village without electricity, but in the last few years prior, they had seen a lot of racing on TV because Ethiopia really, that's their national heroes or runners. That's their best sport, and distance runners. And so they'd seen Tirnesh Dababa and Bekele on TV. And so she was like, I want to be a runner. And we were like, okay, but like, right now, at the moment, she had like done zero physical activity. Like she wasn't allowed to really leave a house for 3 years because that's like what the orphanage was. So we were outside one time at this place with a track, and her and Mia our second oldest daughter tried to run a lap around the track. They couldn't even make it halfway around the track. They collapsed and were like giggling. And Ryan and I are like, oh man, we got a ways to go with these guys to get them healthy. But yeah, once we got them home, we were like, hey, like, you don't have to become runners, but like we need to like move our bodies. Like it's important to, make your heart work and be strong. There's a phrase, Birchi, in Amharic, their language, the runners all tell themselves, which is like, be strong. And we tried to like really keep that mentality going there. And yeah, Hannah and Mia really took to running. Both got scholarships to college. And our younger two actually are running cross country at the moment too. So everyone runs in some capacity. Like I think at times more motivated than others. I don't think any of them quite love running like Ryan and I love running, but it's been awesome just to encourage them that like running's always going to be there for you. Like even if you like lay it down for a season, and everyone's path has been different with running among them. So yeah, I think it's something we definitely encourage, just because like I said, I feel like in our family, like physical activity isn't really like an option. But it's not always running. Sometimes it's basketball, sometimes it's other sports. And those are really important for young kids. So we really encourage those lateral movement sports because those help people avoid injury later in life. And I think I really benefited from that in my career. But I think I think it's just naturally like healthy to be able to run, right? It's like even from just like a survival perspective, like we needed to be able to outrun prey, and I think so yeah, it's something we want them to just be able to do if they want to.
So Hannah's going to be lining up at the Boston Marathon in April, as we mentioned earlier. What are her expectations, or how are you going to help her prepare for that race? I mean, you know a thing or two about running that race.
Yeah, well, leading up to her first marathon, I was coaching her, but I gave her a lot of freedom. I had a lot of freedom early in the sport to like just get carried away or like run however far I want. So I really let her do that a lot this summer, and then I kind of gave her some workouts at times, like when she felt ready for a workout. And I think that's important, especially, I never want my kids to be like running for me or feel like they have to like please me through their running. So I definitely want a lot of it to come from them. So that fortunately she was able to qualify for Boston really easily. She looked so easy out there. We were chatting most of the race. And I think now she's starting School of Ministry at Bethel Church in Reading. So her schedule will be busy, but I think, I'll kind of let her dictate how much mileage she runs and when and stuff, but probably give some structure to her workouts and definitely getting in the hills.
That's important as you get ready for Boston, no doubt. I've been there myself. So one other question before we leave the family theme. We had another question that was submitted by one of our followers on Instagram. It's a mom who's in her late 30s and she's pursuing running seriously for the first time. What advice would you have for her? Because it sounds like, she wants to accomplish some things in the sport and set some goals. What advice would you have for a woman like that in her late 30s, kind of getting started with running?
Yeah, I would say like I'm so proud of you for like making that time for yourself and going for it. And I just want to encourage you that like I know the mom guilt is real, and at times you feel selfish for like not being there when your kids wake up on Saturday morning because you're out doing your long run, or like being away for a race weekend. But I just want to encourage you, like your kids watching you make that time for yourself, be disciplined, like going after a goal, like having something that makes you come alive, like making healthy choices, like that's modeling to them so many things that they like you want to instill in them, and it's like that's worth any like couple hours you're away from them. And honestly, kids don't need us like every hour of the day. It's actually good for them not to be like have to depend on us every hour of the day, and so like just know like that's powerful what you're doing, and yeah, keep it up.
Great advice. Well, let's segue to talk a little bit about more of your career and maybe how you're thinking about the next few years. But as you mentioned, 21st year as a professional. I think I did the math right? If you factor in your high school years and your college years, it's probably pushing 30. I mean, you've been at this a long, long time. What have been the keys, both physically, mentally, spiritually, to be able to compete for this long? But not just compete, you're still producing world-class times.
Yeah, that's really why I wanted to write For the Love of the Grind. My book is just like sharing how I feel like I've been able to have longevity in the sport, and like I really hope to be able to equip other people with those tools and like help people become lifelong athletes. Cause I feel like being an athlete, it doesn't stop when your professional career stops. Like I want to be an athlete my whole life. Like, and obviously that's going to look different. I'm not going to be able to run marathons in the 220s when I'm 80. Right. But like I can still be an athlete, and like that doesn't end. And, it's a lot of, I share a lot more details about it, but it's a combination of physical, mental, spiritual, all of those components. The physical, it's been learning to listen to my body, like that art, like how to take care of your body, having amazing therapists that are in it with you. It's been spiritual for me. Like I would have walked away from this sport 4 years into running professionally because I was really failing. I got last at the US Nationals in 2009. I was feeling so much pressure, so much anxiety around racing. I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And I knew I'd always have running, but I was ready to be done competing. But for me, it was really experiencing the unconditional love of God in a way that went from my head to my heart. And that was like in a really like radical encounter of like being physically healed that I talk about in the book. But it's for me that changed everything. And it started snowballing the other way, where all of a sudden when I realized like love and belonging wasn't on the line every time I stepped to the line, like that I was worthy of that, regardless if I got last or first. And it took a lot of failure to get to that point of experiencing and actually like having that be integrated in my life, that then all of a sudden I felt like I could take risks again. And I started, just like my whole perspective on racing just changed, and I started having a lot more fun in the sport, and that's what kept me going and kept me having fun now. But what's interesting is it's like you feel like you conquer those things then, but I feel like I've had some of those like coming back up recently, where I'm going into races like maybe not as prepared as I want to be, or like like I'm not as dominant as I used to be at times, and it's like all of a sudden I feel like those fear of failures are coming up again, and it's like, oh no, like actually I know how to deal with this. Like, and writing the book was great timing, because I'm like, that's funny. Like I felt like I already like figured that out, but now actually this is like speaking to me like right where I'm at right now, and is like exactly what I need to hear. But and I think that's true in life, right? It's like a spiral, like it's always not always linear, but you're coming back and experiencing the same things, but you try to do it a little better the next time, and so yeah, that was a big part of it too. I mean, there's so many things that went into it, but really I have some amazing people supporting me. ASICS being one of them, their loyalty to me through the really low parts of my career, is what allowed me to reach the best races of my life later in my career. And if they hadn't been, I probably wouldn't have reached those. And they've been really I would say exceptionally loyal to their athletes. So yeah, I feel really lucky for that too.
In addition to longevity, another aspect of your brand as a runner is frequency, right? I think when I look back over your 20-year pro career, I think it's a pretty legit question to ask, Sara. If there's a big marathon coming up, is Sara running it? Because you do like to race. I mean, you have this thirst for racing. To what do you attribute your ability to race frequently and be able to bounce back from really big performances and then take a crack at another marathon?
Yeah, I think I have a genetic ability to recover. Like, I think that's one of my strengths. I think a lot of it is also things I do that like I've learned to take care of my body really well. I was a human biology major at Stanford. I've always been really interested in the body and how to maximize health and performance, but really performance is a reflection of health, right? Like the healthier you can be, which like sleep, number one thing for health you can do, like that's your number one performance and recovery thing too. Things like that. I go into a lot of specifics of like that stuff too in the book. But I think also I think it's that just not being afraid to fail, like trying things like running 2 marathons within 5 weeks of each other, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but it really, I think that open-mindedness started with my very first marathon, was the LA Marathon. It was like a really hot day. It was a really hilly course. I felt like I was in amazing shape, but my legs just completely died around mile 18. And I was like race walking the rest of the course. And I finished in like 2:40 something. Like it wasn't even like an elite time. And I had already made the world championship in cross country, the team, which would take place 13 days later. And I figured I probably wouldn't do it because, that no one really did that kind of stuff at the time, but I just hadn't scratched from the team quite yet for some reason. And when the race went so poorly, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to try to run the world championships in cross country. Like, I'm just going to throw myself into everything I can recovery wise. And thankfully I had a really awesome coach at the time, Steve Magnus, that helped me with a lot of like practical things I could do for recovery. But yeah, every day, like my legs just started to feel a little bit better. And I still hadn't done a workout by the time I got to China, and I tried my first workout. It was just okay. But then by the time the race happened, I was in the end, the top US finisher across any of the races that day, men, women. boys, girls. And it just opened my mind that like maybe the marathon didn't need to be a full stop. Because what was really traditional at the time and what Ryan always did was like 2 full weeks off at least after the marathon, just slow build up to the next marathon. But I love racing so much that I was like, oh, it'd be nice if I didn't have to do that and I could like just keep racing. And so ever since that first marathon, it kind of planted the seed that maybe like, yeah, the marathon didn't have to be a full stop.
And one of those races within the last year, your American Masters record now in the marathon, 2:23, let me get this right, 2:23:40 and change. So, and you've set the Masters record now a couple of times. Are those targets that you're setting for yourself, or are those just the outcome of the training that you're putting in and the bricks that you continue to build in your build up to these events?
Yeah, really the latter. I think, you know, I was chasing like American records just a couple years ago, right? Like I set the American record in the half marathon in 2022. So, and I was hoping to try to go for the American record in the marathon last fall in Chicago. So really that's been more my focus, less the Masters records. But what's been cool is just how like, even though those don't necessarily mean that much to me, like it's been cool to have people that are Masters runners get really excited about them and be like, hey, I love that you're still going hard after this. Like it helps us feel like our goals, whether it's just like qualifying for Boston or whatever it is, like that those aren't out of reach because you're also like trying for these really fast times right now in your 40s. And so yeah, I feel like that's made it more meaningful for sure.
Well, I think I know the answer to this question based on that answer. But since I'm a Masters athlete as well, and like you say, we as fellow Masters athletes like to see others putting those times on the board. So that American record, the Masters record in the marathon, 2:23:45, age grades, I didn't know if you know this or not, but age grades to like 2:18:25, 2:18:30. Based on your reaction, it doesn't sound like you knew that. So you're not looking at age graded tables, right? Like us real Masters geeks are.
That's really exciting to hear. Thanks. That makes my day.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, you might want to look that up as you go, but it's one of the ways that we can say, all right, as Masters athletes, you know, I'm getting up there in years, but how does this equate to when I would have been in my prime? So you might want to visit an age graded calculator the next time you think about that. Well, you've also mentioned, and I'm sure you cover this in the book, how joy is part of how you approach the sport. And you can tell a genuinely optimistic person to begin with. But how much of a factor is joy in continuing to, after 20 years as a pro, seek these fast times and seek new experiences?
It's huge. Yeah. I mean, loving the process, like it's not worth it to just do this for the end results because results are never guaranteed. Like I've had so many days where I was like so ready and you get thwarted by weather or doping or, you know, like there's so many things outside your control. And if you're just in this sport for like that one day, like that one outcome day, like it's not going to be worth it. It's way too much work. Like you have to really love the grind. And Ryan is so good at helping me reframe. So summer is not like where I shine as an athlete. Like the heat is always really tough for me. And I'll be kind of suffering out here on Lake Mary Road and he'll be like, keep it playful, you know, like find the fun in the moment. And I think like that's exactly what I need to hear. Cause I'm very like, I want to hit certain splits. Like I want to like run faster than I ever have before. And he always brings it back to the fun and like, he's really good at making it fun. And so, yeah, I think, I really encourage people like do whatever it is, whether it's like seeking out really fun people to train with or exploring new places to run, like take the time and the energy to like keep the joy and fun in it.
Well, clearly you have good genetics because of your ability as an athlete to compete this late in life as a Masters athlete. But what I'm hearing, and certainly I know you'll cover this in the book, is that the mental side of the sport is just as important, if not more so. And I wanted to get your perspective on this because I happened to be thumbing through my training log the other day as the calendar was turning from August to September. And I'm sure you're familiar with Matt Fitzgerald, his training log. And here's mine. And it just so happened that as I was turning from August to September, there's a story about you. I don't even know if you know that this is in here, but I wanted to read this to you and just kind of get your reaction to this, because you mentioned earlier how you were trying to take a crack at the American record in the marathon back in Chicago in 2021. And he writes a little bit about this, saying that was your goal. You wanted to take down Dina Castor's 2:19:36 mark. You had been pretty public about doing so, and you finished third in that race in 2:27:19. And he writes, except she wasn't disappointed. In a social media post afterwards, she shared that she listed all the positives and that she felt she committed 100% to the goal, executed the plan, fought to the end, and concluded that although she had hoped to do better, she rated her overall performance as mission accomplished. And I read that and I thought that is so insightful, because you put a big audacious goal out there and you come up short, yet you were able to have the perspective at the end and saying, that's what I had that day and it was mission accomplished. Is that something that you learned over the course of your career? Did you learn from coaches or others, or is that just how you are wired as an individual to see the absolute positive in even some really difficult moments?
Yeah, I think probably just experience. I think you realize over time that you can do everything right. You can control all the controllables. And that race is a perfect example, because Ruth Chepengedge is currently serving a doping ban, and my whole buildup and my entire race plan was built around how can I beat Ruth, and even though I was like outclassed by her, I knew it was possible because I'd beaten her at the London Marathon in the last time we met. And so you can do everything right. And then there's things outside your control. There was a really warm day that day that just can throw a wrench in everything. So you really have to, again, it can't be about outcomes. It has to be about the process. And then two, I think you really have to measure yourself by how faithful you are with the gift you've been given. And how did you commit to the process? And I was so all in that buildup. That was the best marathon buildup of my life. And so I have a lot, I feel it's mixed feelings, obviously that wasn't the outcome I wanted, but I have a lot of pride about my process to that race. And I think about it differently now, and especially in light of the recent news and stuff. But it's a good reminder, as for any buildup, that it needs to be about just doing what you can with what you can control.
You mentioned earlier the number of times that you've competed at the Olympic trials, but have not made an Olympic team. When you retire, and that's another question coming up. I mean, are you ever going to retire? But when you retire and you look back on your career, how are you going to process that you accomplished so much in the sport, but fell just short of what certainly many fans and many of us think is the absolute pinnacle of distance running?
Yeah. You'd think that I would feel disappointed or a little bit bitter or something about not making that Olympic team. And I'm honest in saying it's still hard. Someone posted a picture of me collapsed at the finish of Orlando and wrote this really beautiful post about what that moment spoke to people, and just seeing that it's still tough to think how close I was to making that team. And you're what could I have done differently? Or if maybe we could have gotten them to change the start time earlier, despite all our attempts, or all of those things. You just think, what if? But honestly, I look back on my career and I feel so much gratitude and so much shock at what I was able to accomplish, even with so many things that went wrong or maybe didn't go my way. I still lasted way longer than I would have imagined. Would never have thought I'd be doing this long or accomplish what I was able to accomplish. And so I feel so lucky for the ride it's been. and excited to see how it will evolve. I would love to get into like trail ultra stuff at some point, and that's going to be like a whole new kind of world. And yeah, it's again, being a lifelong athlete, it's like it doesn't end. Like I hope to be out there at Boston when I'm like in my 80s, just blowing out my knee cartilage for like one last time.
Well, another shot that you have coming up in not much time is New York City. So I believe you've never run New York City Marathon before, and you've mentioned in a social media post how special New York is as a place to you. You've competed in the Fifth Avenue Mile there, for example. So what's the goal as you get ready to toe the line to run through the boroughs in New York?
Yeah, I love New York City Marathon. I've run it once in 2016. It's been a long time. Really wanted to run it for a really long time. New York is like a place I come alive more than anywhere racing. Yeah, one Fifth Avenue, Milrose Games, the Dash to the Finish 5K, mini 10K. So I've won so many of like the big New York races that like when I just touch down there, like I'm like, oh, I'm ready. And honestly, I feel like with this race, I feel like I've gotten away most of my career of like needing to prove myself to anyone else or even myself. But I do actually feel that a little bit with this race. It's like, I think at 42, like the beautiful thing about our sport is like, you can do it forever, right? Like I can go be doing New York for like 50 more years. But I think if you want to do it at the professional level, like you have to prove you're competitive. And so I feel like, I want to prove that out there. Like I want to be able to mix it up and get myself in the position and to execute a race that shows like, I can still do this because I want to still do it. So yeah, I think that's kind of my mentality is like, Boston, like I sent it pretty hard in that race, took some risks and kind of struggled a little bit at the end. I would love to have like a stronger finish than that and really be able to fully show the work I've been putting in for a number of years here.
Well, this is a completely selfish question, but I'm asking it because you and I are a lot alike in this regard. My time's obviously much slower, but we like variety. You've been a world-class miler, world-class marathoner. I love both of those distances. Which one's harder, the mile or the marathon?
Oh, the marathon. But
Okay.
I miss the road mile days, man. Those were so like, I wish I could, every time Fifth Avenue Mile comes around, I'm like, I wonder if I could still do that. Like, I wonder if Sam would let me in. But the marathon, I mean, there's nothing as hard as those last 6 miles of the marathon. It's even if you're having the best day, it's so tough. But I think that's what keeps you coming back, right? It's like, it's also really hard to nail everything. Like there's always things you can do better and you don't get to run them very often. So it just makes you want to come back for another one and try again.
Exactly. And what can you get out of yourself on that day? That's the question that you want to explore. Here's what I have for you as the last question, Sarah. We've covered a lot and appreciate you sharing all of this because it's been a fabulous conversation. You've accomplished a ton in this sport. You've been at it for a long time. And clearly, from everything that you've covered today, there are several more chapters in the book for you to write in your career. But when it's all said and done and you tie up the racers for the last time, what do you want the big book of running to say about Sara Hall?
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that, but I would say my hope, like above anything necessarily in the sport, was that I encourage people to do it for like find a way to help others through the sport is something that's always been really important to me. So I never dreamed I'd be a professional runner. I always dreamt of doing development work in Africa, and that's still what I want to do. It's what led me to my daughters. It's what led us to start the Hall Steps Foundation and do the work we're doing there in Ethiopia. We're currently starting our own project in Ethiopia, taking kids that have been living on the streets and giving them housing and putting them through job training. And the reason I decided to go into pro running was God told me I could do more through my running than I could if I just moved over there and started doing that work. And so that's been a big motivator for me to continue doing the sport, engaging the running community and helping, because to me, it's more important than anything else. Like, I mean, racing is fun, but there's people starving to death every day. There's kids living on the streets. And like, to me, like that's what matters. And so that doesn't always have to be everyone's cause, but I would just encourage people like, yeah, to like find something to make your like have running matter in a different, a deeper way. And that actually will actually really help your running. Like Ryan one year was wanting to drop out of a marathon. He wasn't going that well, but he'd committed all his prize money to our charity. And he stuck in there. He just started passing people. It started going better and he ended up finishing pretty well. And so it's amazing how it can help you when your focus is on helping others too. So yeah, I don't know, maybe that.
Yeah, I think that's great. There's so much that you can do with the sport to help others. I think that's a great way to think about it. Before we go, I want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit more about the book. By the way, I don't know who came up with the title, but for your story, For the Love of the Grind, there is no better title for the Sara Hall story. I just wanted to pass that along, but share a little bit more about that. When is the book coming out?
The book will be out the day after Boston Marathon next year. It's available for pre-order now. And yeah, it's anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. And if you pre-order the book, you'll get access to some fun stuff I've been working on. There's more details to come on that. Just save your receipts. And you also can submit for a little autograph plaque for your book to put in there. But hopefully I'll also get to meet some people out on the road. I'm hoping to do a book tour and come to races and stuff. And really I really want a chance to like meet people. Like a lot of times we don't get a chance to do that when we're really focused on racing. And so really hoping to do a lot of that this year. So yeah, thanks so much.
Well, good luck with that. And thank you so much for being so generous with your time and joining us on Inside TMP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we are just getting started on the podcast. Coming up next week is another Marathon Project alum. We're going to talk to Rory Linkletter, and he has a lot to share as well. You're not going to want to miss that episode either. Please join us next week on Inside the Marathon Project. We are one race, one project, one pursuit. It is the Marathon Project, and we'll talk to you again next week on Inside TMP.